Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And I was a bit worried that we weren't going to be getting them with the Race to World First and AWC underway, and we didn't see any class changes on Tuesday. I wasn't sure if they were going to leave them for a little bit later, but it looks like we are going to get a round of tuning adjustments that are going to have big implications pretty much right now, on Tuesday on the next reset. That's likely to affect the tournaments, likely to affect the ladder as well. And we're going to be covering all of those changes here. And as always, if you want to stay up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So let's get started. As we've now completed 3 weeks of the War Within Season 1, we have enough data and feedback on class performance to allow us to do a broad pass on outliers in dungeon, raid, and PvP play. With scheduled weekly maintenance in each region, we will make the following adjustments. So these seem to be really big. This seems like this is going to be a big deal. For Blood Death Knights, your Vampiric Strike damage is getting a massive buff by 30%. So for them, I think evening out the balance of hero talents is a big goal, judging by these changes right here. Sand Lane, inflicting Infliction of Sorrow now deals 20% of the remaining disease damage to enemies when it extends its duration up from 15, and Infliction of Sorrow now deals 130% of the remaining disease damage to the enemy when it consumes. It was 100% previously. Sand Lane Visceral Strength now grants 12% of strength for 12 seconds up from 8, and Sand Lane Frenzied Bloodthirst now increases the damage of Death Strike by 6% per stack up from 5. Now obviously in dungeons and the like, the tank balance I think is usually always a little bit top heavy towards one tank specifically, but these seem to be aiming to even out Sand Lane versus the other options for Blood Death Knight. It might have some implications as well for something like Battleground Blitz if these damage numbers are impactful enough. For Demon Hunter, Eldrachi Reaver Wounded Quarry damage increased by 100%. Eldrachi Reaver Warblade's Hunger damage increased by 100%. And the Eldrachi Reaver Reaver's Glaive damage increased by 15%. So a lot of focus on Eldrachi. I think a lot of Demon Hunters are playing Felsguard at the moment for kind of just the passive damage increase. So this is likely going to be felt really positively, whether it's in PvE or PvP. So I think this is good that they've slipped this through on both sides for evening them out and giving Demon Hunter a bit more power. For Vengeance, Mastery Fellblood Effectiveness increased by 20%. Shattering Souls healing per soul increased to 7% of recent damage up from 6, and Soul Barrier base absorb value increased by 50%, and absorb value per soul increased by 100%. These seem like very big buffs to self-sustainability for Vengeance. I haven't obviously been keeping 100% on top of the meta for tanks and PvE, but these seem like very big numbers in terms of your own self-sufficiency on Vengeance specifically. For Feral Druid, Wildstalker chance for Bloodseeker Vines to grow on a single target is unchanged, but slightly increase when Rip and Rake are on multiple targets. Wildstalker bursting growth damage increased by 10%. Feral buffs. This is very surprising to see, at least for PvP. Now in PvE, I think Feral Druid is actually struggling. That's at least what I see on Twitter from the PvE people that I follow. Feral is pretty on the bottom there, so I'm not surprised to see Feral buffs, but we'll see if the PvP specific ones offset this at all. For Resto Druids, you guys just, you ain't getting a buff, bro. You just ain't. 5% healing increase, but not in PvP. However, Cenarian Ward is getting a 40% healing increase. So extending the Cenarian Ward as Resto Druid in PvP scenarios is definitely going to be a lot more valuable. In PvE, Cenarian Ward being a single target heal, it doesn't really see a lot of competitive play. So maybe this bumps it up a bit. It's kind of like an emergency tank heal or a major dot on a party member, but Resto Druid getting some love in this pass. For Augmentation Evoker, Blistering Scales now will only grant allies 20% of your armor down from 30%. Augmentation in PvE makes your allies really tanky. It has been problematic in the past for PvP, but I wouldn't say most recently. So this is definitely going to be felt as a nerf towards that mechanic as far as being like an anti-melee specialization. We'll see if you get anything in the PvP ones that offset this. For Devastation, Flame Shaper consume flame damage increased by 25%. Flame Shaper engulf damage reduced by 20% in PvP. Okay, so I feel like every evoker is pretty much running Scale Commander. So a bit surprised to see like a equal nerf pullback for Flame Shaper, but maybe Devastation's damage is just so high they're worried about that scaling a little bit too high. But for Preservation, Flame Shaper engulf healing increased by 20% and consume flame healing reduced by 50%. So this is now where some problems happen between PvE and PvP, because Flame Shaper I'm imagining is being played in PvE a lot, but in PvP I think they're playing the Chrono Warden, I think is what it's called, for the blink effect when you hover, and other passive effects as well, I think mostly towards Living Flame. So I don't know, this probably won't have a huge effect, at least on PvP. For Basilisk, for Beast Masteries, Basilisk collar damage bonus per damage over time effect is 2 to 4%, down from 5 to 10, and this means they can balance your, or just buff your baseline abilities and take more emphasis out of Basilisk Collar. I think this is a healthy direction for Beast Mastery. They're buffing Kill Command by 18% and just overall pet damage by 4%. That's going to be really gnarly though, because BM Hunter damage is really high. So this is going to be really good in PvP. For survival, your 2-set bonus is increasing Wildfire Bomb by 8% up from 5, and your 4-set bonus is increasing Raptor Strike and Mongoose Bite by 20% on Wildfire Bomb targets up from 10. So some Survival Hunter buffs as well. These 4-set bonuses looking a lot more juicy. It's just going to help you across the game as a whole. For Mage, Frostfire bolt damage increased by 15%. I cannot believe I'm reading a buff towards this. Frostfire infusion damage 50% increase, and Frostfire empowerment damage bonus increased to 60 up from 50, and Frostfire mastery now grants you 2% mastery up from 1. So obviously I think all the mages are playing Spellslinger in PvE, so they're buffing Frostfire, but Frostfire is what everybody's playing in PvP. So this is like that. I mean, we have to get to the PvP specific changes to see if maybe that gets offset, but initially that seems wild. For Monk, Master of Harmony, Stored Vitality causes an additional 40% healing and damage up from 25. Big buff there, I think, towards Monk. I think Monk definitely needed some love. Mastery for Brewmaster, Coalescence now causes Aspect of Harmony to increase damage and healing taken by 20%. Master of Harmony, Chi Wave, Chi Burst deals 100% increased damage up from 50. And Master of Harmony, Overwhelming Force increased to 20 up from 15. And Master of Harmony, Balanced Stratagem increases damage to 5% up from 3. So again, trying to equal out the hero talents here for Brewmaster as well. Mystery, for Mistweaver, Master of Harmony, Coalescence now causes Aspect of Harmony to increase damage and healing taken by 30%. And Aspect of Harmony now stores 30% of the healing done up from 20. So a little bit more throughput here onto the Master of Harmony. For Windwalker, Conduit of the Celestial Conduit now scales its damage with Mastery hit combo, trying to make this more competitive, because I think this one initially was like going to be the go-to for Windwalkers, and then everybody re-rolled to what is it, the Shadow Pan one, I think is what it's called. And then this one got forgotten. So this is such a difficult balancing act of trying to bring them together, but this is an interesting way of trying to make the Conduit a bit more viable, at least for Windwalkers. For Holy Paladin, all healing reduced by 5%, but not in PvP. Lightsmith, Awakening now causes Blessing of the Forge to spawn a sacred weapon when extending the duration of Avenging Wrath. Now, at least in PvP, I think nobody's playing Lightsmith, so let's see what's going on with this. Lightsmith, Hammers, and Anvil's healing effect radius increased to 20 yards up from 5, and Lightsmith, Hammer, and Anvil's healing increased by 150%, and Divine Guidance effect increased by 50%. So these are a lot of modifiers, making it a bit easier to play around for your teammates as well, and may be worth experimenting with in PvP specifically. For Prop Paladins, you're going to get a 6% damage buff, a 20% Word of Glory buff. A Light of the Titans now heals over 10 seconds down from 15. So I assume it's the same value in a faster amount of time. Faith in the Light duration increased to 6 up from 5. Lightsmith, Sacred Weapon damage and healing increased by 30. You're also getting Lightsmith buffs. Forged Reckoning damage increased by 30%. Blessed Assurance increases the damage of next Crusader Strike. Hammer of Righteousness and Blessed Hammer by 200% up from 100. Divine Guidance damage and healing increased by 50%. Hammer and Anvil damage increased by 40%. And Sanctification grants 2% increased primary stat from 1. Now, Prop Pally has not been very viable in like BG Blitz, but these damage modifiers, like if you can be a threat in PvP as a DPS, this could pull you back from non-existence. For Retribution, Templar, this is the one every ret was excited about. Is it actually going to be good? Shake the Heavens is going to last 2 seconds longer. Sanctification duration is also going to last 2 seconds longer. Final Reckoning now increases the damage of your Hammer of Light by 30% up from 15. Hammer of Light main target damage increased by 25%. Hammer of Light secondary target damage increased by 75%. Light's Deliverance now triggers at 50 stacks down from 60, so more frequently. Undisputed Ruling grants 15% haste for 8 seconds up from 12% haste. Wrathful Descent now deals 125% of the Empyrean Hammer damage to nearby enemies up from 100%. And Empyrean Hammer now benefits from Penitence and Burn to Ash. So more synergy and just overall throughput and more effective gameplay for Templar. Definitely, I think if you're a ret, this is going to be worth checking out. I don't know if it's going to outdamage the sunspots, I think are what they're called, at least in BG Blitz. But in arena or smaller, group content with not as many targets, maybe Templar is going to start to squeak in there a bit. Shadow Priest buffs. 10% Mind Blast damage, 10% Shadow Word Death, 10% Void Bolt, Shadow Apparition 10% damage, 10% Entropic Rift damage, 10%, 20% Void Blast damage, 10% Collapsing Void damage, 10% Void Flay damage, and then 5% damage on Vampiric Touch of Shadow Repaint. Void Weaver is back. Void Weaver is back, bro. They killed it because it was looking so good and so strong at the start in the beta, and then they just like nerfed it to the oblivion, and now it's like It's coming back. It's coming back. We're already seeing it played in PvP, so this is definitely a big win for Shadow Priests. Assassination Rogues. Caustic Spatter poison damage dealt to nearby enemies, going down a bit, so a little bit less AoE. Narubar's Palace 2-set bonus. Chance to trigger Vile Tincture increased, though. For your 2-set bonus, Vile Tincture's poison damage buff now correctly affects Venom, Kingsbane, and appropriate hero talent effects. 4-set bonus. Thrombotic Tincture now correctly applies upon gaining 5 stacks, down from 6. We result in these changes will a net increase overall damage weighted heavily towards single targets. That's a buff for PvP. You really care about single target. So definitely, that's a bit scary because Assassination Rogue is already really good. Outlaw getting a bit of love here, 4% damage buff to everything and an additional 6% to dispatch. Precise Cuts bonus to Blade Fury damage per missing target increased to 4%, up from 2. So a little bit of love here, not a lot. We'll see what the PvP specific changes have for you in that regard. Resto Shaman, Earthen Harmony now causes Earth Shield to reduce damage taken by 3%, down from 5, but not in PvP. Okay, thank God. And then Acid Rain damage is going down by 20%. That will also be in PvP. Totemic is really popular right now. I was hoping that for Farseer, they would make it so that Riptide will also apply a Flame Shock to a nearby target. Hopefully that isn't CC'd. Because one of the main problems with Resto Shaman is healing and balancing doing damage at the same time. And I think it would help increase Farseer's viability in PvE, because then you'd be able to get Flame Shocks rolling for instant Lava Burst damage without having to commit too many globals. And then in PvP, you're falling behind on healing so much, it's hard to even get Flame Shock out. So getting a Flame Shock proc from your Riptide means you can just use instant Lava Burst when they proc at opportune moments. So I don't know how they can incorporate that. It's just like the top of the Farseer baseline tree is like Riptide also applies a Flame Shock to a nearby enemy. I think that would create a lot more fun playstyle for Resto Shaman and make Farseer more competitive in the game as a whole. Demonology, Pact of the Eredrune Doom Guards. Okay, demo buffs. They're going to do 20% more damage. Grimoire Felguard is also going to do 60% more damage for the Felguard. That's a 15% buff. And it gets a 10% baseline buff. And Gloomhound's Gloom Slash got a 20% buff. Okay, Demonology Warlocks, you're eating pretty good. This is going to be an interesting day on Tuesday. Colossus changes for Warrior. Arterial Bleed causes Colossal Might to increase the damage dealt by Deep Wounds and Rend by 3%, up from 2. No Stranger to Pain increases total damage ignored by Ignore Pain by 20. So a little bit, I think this is survivability for Warrior. Definitely need to go up a little bit. So I think that's really good. Mountain Thane Lightning Strikes, 25% buff. Mountain Thane Ground Current damage increased by 25%. I wonder what the threshold is for Mountain Thane to actually be viable in PvP, because I do think there is a threshold point where it's like this Thunderclap damage is actually going to be pretty real, at least when you can hit multiple targets. So it's something like a Melee Cleave Me or something like that, or maybe a BG. If you know there's a lot of melee. But I don't think it's hit that threshold, and I don't know if this is enough to hit that. Thorm's Might causes Lightning Strikes to generate 3 rage, though, down from 5, a little less rage generation. The other problem, too, is I think Mountain Thane might be popular in PvE, so it's not getting those buffs for PvP. Slayer, Culling Cyclone bonus Bladestorm damage. Oh, reduced to 10 from 20, though. Slayer getting nerfed again. They have to compensate you with something in PvP for this, because this is brutal. Slayer Opportunist now increases the damage and critical strike damage. Your next overpower Raging Blow by 20, down from 30. That one's also getting hit. Fury Warrior 2-set bonus. It's going to increase the damage of your next Rampage by 15%, so a Rampage buff for Fury Warrior. When Raging Blow resets its cooldown, the damage of your next Bloodthirst is increased by 20, up from 10. That's up to 40. That's pretty big. And then Mountain Thane, Crashing Thunder causes Thunderclap to generate 8 rage, up from 5. And Mountain Thane, Strength of the Mountain increases Bloodthirst Rampage damage by 30, up from 20. Mountain Thane, Thorm's Might increases Raging Blow and execute damage by 25. So buffs to Fury. Arms, though, they don't like you guys, apparently. So we'll see for PvP specifically. Obviously, these are for PvE, so I'm hoping they give you some love in the PvP part of this. Prots also seeing their Thunder Blast generate 8 rage, down from 10, so nerfs towards Prot Warrior. For PvP, Death Knight. Oh my god, Death Knight, I think you're dead. Oh my god, 15% damage reduction to Death Coil, Virulent Plague, Frost Fever, and Blood Plague. It's over, dude. I think it's over for you guys, bro. Oh my god. That is a massive nerf. For Demon Hunter, you got a 4% damage increase on top of the buffs to the Glaive Eldrachi Reaver as well on top, and an Immolation Aura buff by 13.6%. So pretty decent for Havoc. No, I wouldn't say completely over the top. Ferocious Wound is only going to decrease health by 3% per stack, down from 5. I honestly can't believe that's the only change Feral's getting. Feral is eating pretty good right now. You got some buffs up there towards Wildstalker, and that's the, like, I mean, this is still reasonably powerful because the HP is so high, but I thought you were going to get nipped more than that. I mean, like, considering what DK got, I was expecting you to get nipped more than that. Resto Druid, Tranquility is getting a healing buff by 30%, and your mana regeneration is only reduced by 40%. So you're going to get a little more mana efficiency and Tranquility healing. Maybe they're happy with the Cyclone playstyle. You do have to use Cyclone quite frequently to be viable as Resto Druid, but making their mana a bit more competitive with the other healers, and they're kind of slowly trying to track Resto Druid a bit. It seems like with these changes. For Hunter, Survival of the Fittest is only going to give you 25% damage reduction down from 30, and Survival Tactics damage reduction is also now only going to be a 2-second duration down from 3. These seem like reasonable changes towards Hunter. I feel like nerfing their offense is the mistake. Hunter's always been kind of more like glass cannon oriented, so targeting their defense a bit here by a conservative amount I think is fair, given how much they have access to now. Dark Ranger Smokescreen now applies Survival of the Fittest at 50% effectiveness. Okay, now these are starting to get a little more significant. Sentinel Don't Look Back effectiveness has also been reduced by 50%. So survival nerfs towards Hunter. For Mage, Frigid Winds is now 50% effective in PvP combat. Is that the snare? Are they actually nerfing the snare? I'm pretty sure that's the snare on Mage, if I'm not trolling. So, okay, that's a big buff to Warrior if they did that. Like any melee that doesn't, want to queue into Mages, that's a big change possibly. But correct me if I'm wrong about that in the comments down below, but I'm pretty sure that is the snare. Arcane Missiles is getting a 15% damage buff, and Arcane Orb is getting a 10% damage buff, so more buffs towards Arcane. And Fire Mage, Pyroblast to 20% damage buff, Fireball 150% increase from 100, Scorch 300% up from 200%, Ignite damage increased by 15%, World and Flame PvP talent now though only increases Flame Strike damage by 50 down from 100, and Glass Cannon now decreases your health by 30% up from 15, and only increases the damage of Scorch, Fireball, and Ignite by 20. Wait, what? This talent just got deleted. But they buffed these abilities baseline so much that you pretty much you're just tankier and doing more damage, I think, is the net result here for Fire Mage. Resto Shamans, all Shamans, your healing stream totem is just doing 15% more healing. For Elemental, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and Tempest are all getting 15% damage increases. I don't know if it's enough because you still hardcast so much. But obviously, like the Lava Burst build can kind of feel like tickle attacks. So I'm probably going to give this a go on my stream, at least with Ellie, and see what Tempest is like, because Lightning Shaman does look cool and it's never really been viable. So I'm hoping with the rework at 11.05, maybe these buffs, that'll be a bit more viable. Resto Shaman is also getting a 10% buff to Healing Wave and Healing Surge. Resto Shaman did need some love. Again, I think that change to Farseer would also be cool, a cool addition. For Warlock, Demon Skin armor bonus is no longer reduced. You're getting 50% more armor? I guess I didn't like how fast you're dying to BM hunters in the tournament or something there. But what is this? Demonic Resilience now reduces the damage taken by your primary pet by an additional 67%. So they're trying to help demonology pets not dying and maybe Destro a bit. But they're making you tankier. I can't believe Warlock got a buff. Oh, it doesn't come without compensation, though. Oh, my God. DKs and Warlocks got destroyed. Malevolent Visionary reduced by 30%. Shadowbolt Volley reduced by 25%. Soul Harvester Wicked Reaping damage reduced by 20%. Soul Anathema damage reduced by 20%. Demonic Soul damage reduced by 20%. It's over, bro. Aflocks, DKs. You're donezo. You're donezo. You ain't living high anymore. Demon Bolt damage for Demonology, though, got buffed, and Demo got some really big buffs. So definitely think Demo is eating good right now, at least with these changes. Warrior, defensive stance is getting buffed. Okay, so yeah, survivability for Warrior felt pretty low. So I think taking this up 5% is good. And then also Arms Warrior. Hey, look, buffs. 15% execute damage. Mortal Strike damage increased by 55% up from 35. Master and Commander now reduces the cooldown of Rallying Cry by 120 seconds up from 90, and increases its effect only by 10% down from 15. Now you can run, I think the Rallying Cry breaks root effects type of deal here. I don't know if this is that big of a deal. I think the damage buffs and the D stance change are way more bigger. And then Prot also, you just got a random 15% execute damage buff as Prot Warrior. So maybe you're gonna Prot Warrior and BG Blitz. Biggest deal is I think Warlock and DK are donezo. I think you guys are toast. It is over for you, but I'm interested to see what the buffs do to the other specs as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this update. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.